bring that to the bench. In his work that we've done together, the last case I actually ever tried in the Superior Court, I tried with Adam as my co-counsel. While we were not victorious in that trial, we in fact put on a very strong case. And the strength of that case came from Adam's doggedness, his preparation for the case, his understanding and deep dive into the legal issues and the facts of the matter, and his command in the courtroom. And I think that will serve him quite well in all litigants when he's wearing the robe, respectfully. Also, there's a deep sense of humanity. We live in a time in this, not just this country, but this world where it seems like we've lost a sense of our humanity. Adam appreciates that when someone comes before the court, either by design or by default, it is, by its very nature, a potentially stressful and strenuous situation, and particularly for those who come before the court who are in the most vulnerable positions. Adam will bring a sense of humanity and empathy to those circumstances, bound nevertheless by the rule of law and the facts that are presented before him. In that sense, I think he will offer up a very sound, reasoned, thoughtful, deliberative, and humanity-professing sense of justice from the bench. I think he will serve as a great role model for those of us still in the practice, still serving in litigation capacity, still serving as advocates. And I look forward to his work in that regard.
Thank you. I agree with everything you said. We only had a short time to meet. The Governor's Council in their wisdom had put in our questionnaire that they require the nominee to submit the questionnaire 8 days before the hearing. Well, unfortunately, close it, but this nominee got it 6.5 days before the hearing, so you can't go back to the future. But anyway, he did it. But what I'm saying is that, and it's under pain of perjury, so you really have to take your time to do it, and you know that, you've been here. But what I met with him, as you know, I meet with everyone, and I'll tell you, what came through to me, and I won't vote for anyone unless they have compassion, and, with all his abilities and all of the things that he's done, which is amazing. He is, the writings, everything. But I saw that compassion. And if we don't have that on the bench, because I know you're concerned and I'm concerned about the racial disparity in the courts, and it still exists in Massachusetts, and I'm fighting it. And I think we have a good administration that's going to fight it too. So here's someone who can stand for us. And I shouldn't say that before I even vote next week, but I haven't said that. But you don't know how much it means to see you and for you to testify. That really is such a privilege to have you here. So I hope you come down more often, just to visit.
It's been a long time since I've stood before a court or a tribunal of any kind, but I do recall from my trial days that when the judge seems to be going in your direction, the best thing to do is just stop talking. So I'll just stop talking.
Really. This is
Anybody else have any questions? Senator, it was great to see you as always. We obviously, your input here means a lot because you were very much involved for a long time in helping us select judges and Governor Patrick select judges. And I also appreciated the text I got as the new administration came in asking me to take care of your friend Paige, to be nice to her. She's doing a great job. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, counselors. Thank you very much.
Okay, next we're going to call on Cheryl A. Swan. Could you just tell us what your role is? It's not here. I know what it is, but the other counselors don't.
Yes, I will. I am Adam's assistant. I've been working with him for 8 years at Min7.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm not much of a public speaker, so I'm definitely nervous, but I do appreciate the chance to spend just a couple of minutes to talk to you about what it's like to work with Adam. Again, my name is Cheryl Swan. I've been a legal assistant for over 35 years, the last 25 years at Min7, and I have had the privilege of working with Atty Sisitsky as his assistant for the past 8 years, even though it feels longer. One of my favorite stories about Adam involves when I was first assigned to be his assistant. I walked into his office and I told him how excited I was to work for him, and he immediately stopped me and he corrected me and he said, "You won't be working for me, you'll be working with me. We're going to be a team." I just think that that speaks volumes about Adam in general. He was speaking to me about how he thinks assistants are often underappreciated and that he truly values the work that we do and how we are the ones who usually make the lawyers look good. And a lot of people talk like that, but Adam really meant that. And every day since, he has treated me like a true partner and a friend. He always thanks me for the work that I do, no matter how busy or how stressed he is. He goes out of his way every morning to come say hi. He always asks me about my day, my weekend, my kids. He probably knows more about my daughter's wedding planning this past year than he ever bargained for. But his interest is always genuine. And it's not just me. For instance, the firm had a longtime male clerk with mental disabilities. Adam always treated him like an equal and would banter with him about Boston sports teams, sometimes for hours. Adam is also a proud dad, and rightfully so. And he loves to talk about his wife, his kids, their latest exploits. There simply isn't a nicer or more down-to-earth person at the firm. I've seen Adam in action, and he is a smart and talented lawyer. But what will make him a great judge is the way he treats everyone he meets with respect, dignity, and fairness. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions? Councilor Devane.
Just ask one, thank you. I feel you are very important because I've met with Adam and I know that you meet with him more than his wife. So you know his ups, his downs and all of that. So you know his disposition. We've already covered that. He is very level. Now, tell me, is there any case that comes up or any matter that came up to you that stands out that you were most impressed with the way he handled it?
I just think it's more overall just how he treats people, whether it's, people in the firm or whether it's outside counsel, just the way that he talks to them. I hear him on the phone. I'm the one that takes the phone call and gives him the call. He's just very respectful of everyone that he meets and that he speaks with. When he wins a case or loses a case, he just kind of moves on to the next work that he has to do. He's just phenomenal, and I'm sad that I almost wanted to lie and say he's an awful person because I don't want him to leave. Where I feel like I've become friendly with his family, and just like I said, he's so supportive of me, of people in the firm. I mean, there are people in the firm that go to him for all kinds of advice, whether it's work related, personal related. He's always open to chatting with them, and he's just phenomenal person.
Well, I know Lisa Poppy, who he worked with, and we loved her up here.
She said to say hello, by the way.
She was wonderful, and we've had some good people. The thing that you talked about really resonates with me because when someone goes to court, they're afraid. When they go before a judge, and if that judge can smile, that goes a long way. They can make you feel welcome. And I think that's what I saw in him, and that's what I'm hearing from you and Mo. And your testimony means a lot. And I didn't mean that to be that you do see him more than his wife, but you do. And there's times when he's overwhelmed and he still has that respect for you and we're good.
Oh, he has that respect for everyone. He comes in and he always, and the other thing is he always has a smile on his face, even if he's in traffic or, however the day started out, he comes in and he's
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, the person that's coming to your place is going to have a hard time, really, but thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Thank you very much. That's going to close the portion of the witnesses in favor of the nominee. Is there anybody in opposition? Judge Stark, there was a line at security. Would you check? Hearing none, we'll close that portion. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, distinguished members of the Governor's Council. I am honored and humbled to appear before you today as a nominee for Associate Justices of the Superior Court, and I am very appreciative of the enormous time and attention that you've given to my candidacy, the time that you've spent with me, most of you in person, and some of you by telephone. I can personally attest to the diligence in a thoughtful and thorough manner that each of you have given my nomination, and I appreciate it. I first want to thank those folks that testified on my behalf. Kind words from Judge Brennan, who spoke briefly about some of the cases we tried together. Senator Cowan, my dear friend, colleague, with whom I also tried cases. He is certainly always a tough act to follow. And my dear friend, colleague, and assistant, Cheryl Swan, I can't thank you enough for the kind words. I want to express my sincere thanks to Governor Healy for nominating me and to the governor and lieutenant governor and the manner in which they've supported my application. I also want to thank the Judicial Nominating Commission and the Joint Bar Committee and certainly Valerie McCarthy in the Governor's Council's office, who has kept things happening and made things happen in this regard. And finally, I just want to say a quick and very heartfelt thank you to the Governor's legal team. Certainly Chief Counsel Paige Scott Reed and Derek Kesselheim and Jesse have been so enormously helpful to me during this process, and I thank you deeply in that regard. You've all reviewed my application, my qualifications thoroughly, and I've had the opportunity, as I said, to meet with you and speak with you. I hope today to just speak briefly about my personal and professional background in a way that perhaps gives some more color and informs your opportunity to vote, gives you a sense of who I am and where I come from. My story, without much surprise, begins with immigrants. And my father's grandparents came to this country fleeing pogroms in Eastern Europe in the late 1800s and settled in Springfield, Massachusetts. My mother's family took a similar path out of Eastern Europe that led them remarkably to Worcester, Massachusetts. So when they met and got together, they decided to raise their family a little bit east out in Framingham, and that's where I grew up. I grew up the second of 4 children in Framingham, attended public schools there, as did my brothers and sister, and was raised in a family where public service and giving back to your community were paramount ideals that were instilled upon us. As you've heard from Senator Cowan, my father was a civil engineer by training and went into public service as the city planner in the city of Medford, and then on to the town of Natick, where he served for almost 40 years as a director of public works. My mother is an artist and an art teacher in the public school system. They taught me deeply the values of integrity, humility, and justice, and to be involved in your community too. There are people who served as coaches, who served in the PTO, who served in the town meeting. And some of my earliest memories, frankly, as a child, was sitting by their side on the very hard chairs in the Memorial Building in Framingham, watching town meeting proceedings take place. That's the place where I come from. As a father of 2 of my children I introduced to you, our third, Isaac, is 10 years old. He's in the 5th grade. We thought he should be back learning math today and not here. I have tried to instill them the values that my father and my mother instilled upon me. And first and foremost is being present. It's a challenge as an attorney, keeping that work-life balance, but I've made it my mission to do so to the best of my abilities. And I'm proud of them. I'm fortunate to have a partner on this journey. She's here today for the last 20 years, Jen, my wife, and thank you. As you read from my application too, my professional background in light of my passion for service certainly took me on a curious path. I graduated from New England School of Law in 1997, and at the urging of some colleagues and friends, despite my interest, having obtained a master's degree in public administration, I thought for sure that I'd go to work in public service, but I was encouraged to apply to a firm. I was very fortunate. I landed at a phenomenally supportive law firm, Mintz Levin, that Mo Cowan spoke about, certainly. Mintz is for a place where people work hard. Our chairman, Bob Popio, may he rest in peace, instilled in the firm values congruent with those that I learned at home. Be respectful of all, be welcoming to all, and treat people with respect. That's the primary thing that I take after 25 years from Minslevin. I also take an experience of hard work. I came to the firm to work in the securities litigation group, not having any background in high finance or investments or in the financial world of shareholders and securities. That's not the family that I came from, humble and modest roots. But through my own diligence and frankly curiosity for the law, with the support of strong mentors, I dug in and learned the ropes and eventually rose to become the co-chair of our securities litigation group. I have loved the people and the work there, and I feel privileged to have worked there. My work, as you understand, mostly involves representing large companies and their officers and directors, individuals in complex litigation matters. And I think the thing I've enjoyed the most about my practice is whether we're proceeding through litigation, whether we're going to trial. My job has always been to tell my client's story and do it in a way that takes complex ideas and make them simple and compelling and persuasive. And that's what I've loved most about the opportunity to do there. I've really enjoyed it. I've had the chance to try cases in state and federal court. I've had the chance to see other parts of the country and beyond, and it's been incredibly fulfilling. I want to become a Superior Court judge because I care deeply about the timely, fair, and impartial administration of justice, and I've always yearned to work professionally in public service. I'm thrilled at the prospect of having the opportunity, with your blessing and with your approval, to serve in this capacity. I thank you for your consideration, and I humbly and respectfully ask for your vote. Thank you. Let me answer any questions.
Councilor Devane.
Thank you for all the time that you afforded me. We only had a few days and it was the holiday and you gave me generously of your time. First of all, I want to mention your dad. And I just want to say, I wish Framingham, and I talked before the Charter Commission and told them, don't change your government. Don't do it. And I had a horse in the race, okay, for Framingham. And they yelled at me and said, am I being paid? Am I owed everything? But I know from Watertown, I didn't want you to go, but so what happened? I'm going to tell tales out of school. They got a mayor, put them in debt. Unbelievable. And you are now the mayor, and you inherited that. God bless you. I can't believe it. So I wish you all good luck, but you have all the qualities to do it. And so I wish you all good luck. I have to say that because I'm really glad to be here. So it was such a pleasure to meet you. And what I look for, first of all, I like your age, because I think you have to have life experience to bring. And when we have a 40-year-old, they're not involved in community service or, for the most part, or helping out in doing it pro bono. And you have community service. But besides all your qualifications, that tells me you care about people on all levels, whether it's at home in Framingham or whether it's in the court. So what I wanted to ask you is, what aspect of you've done so much public service, and they time me, they voted. I'm against timing, but sorry, I can't talk fast. So what aspect of any public service that you have done, what activity that you value the most that brings you to be so qualified for the Superior Court?
Thank you, Counselor. And I similarly enjoyed our time together too, and your questions were thoughtful and thorough, and I appreciate the time you made for me. So there are two things that stand out in terms of my public service that I'm both proud of and that are meaningful to me. One is the work that I did with Greater Boston Legal Services. Serving on their board was entirely fulfilling because that's an organization that does so much good in the community and providing civil legal aid to those in need. My colleague Sue to be here today is someone who got me involved with that group, and she and I had the pleasure of chairing our firm's involvement in this Walk to the Hill for legal aid each year. And that's an incredibly meaningful and fulfilling project because it brings together so many members of the community, legal and otherwise, who care about, making sure that people have access and representation. And that's critical. The other thing that comes to mind is, frankly, it's not legal in nature, but I especially enjoy working with kids in our community. We have a very diverse community, and there's some real challenge. Kids coming from circumstances that aren't great, that are very challenging. They don't have a lot that they come to school with or recreational activities. And so I joined with a few parents in our community to reconstitute our youth basketball league. And one of the things we did was say, it costs a lot of money to rent basketball courts and pay for uniforms and do all that stuff. We're going to make sure that these kids who can't afford it are able to play no matter what. And I'm proud of that.
No, that's what I see in you, all the time that you've taken and your pro bono, people can't afford it. I am amazed in 25 years to see a page and a half of articles that you've written. That is amazing. And I might ask you later, because some of them are so interesting. Failure to investigate could mean game, set, and match. Whistleblower complaints swell as a flood, all of those. Now, when you think of all those articles, what was the most important article that you believe that you wrote?
Thank you. I have had the opportunity to do a fair amount of writing at Mintz, both in the practice of law as well as in professional development matters in regard to some that you've referenced. I think the one that's most meaningful to me, frankly, is a chapter that I was asked to help write in an MCLE publication. There's an MCLE publication called Business Torts. And it's frankly, the seminal guide that people rely upon to learn about some of civil actions involving torts. And I was fortunate to be asked by a colleague of mine, Peter Saparov, who then chaired our securities litigation group, to co-write a chapter on securities litigation in Massachusetts. And that was some time ago. And we've updated that chapter several times, and now it's on the bookshelves. And it's a place where people rely upon and look to something I've written for expertise. And I take great pride in that.
That's great. Now, how many trials have you had?
I don't know the exact number. It's over 20, 26, I think, is the number I reported in my application. I am pretty sure that's accurate. Yes.
So when you look back at these trials, is there one that stands out in your mind that will always be with you? I think the others, but if you can think of one.
I think the one that stands out most in my mind is a jury trial before Judge Woodlock in the federal court 20 years ago. And I was an associate, and my colleagues and I were representing 3 individuals who had formed a business here in Massachusetts. 3 Massachusetts folks formed a business doing video component boards for computers. And they were so earnest and so eager and so smart and so talented, and they built this company themselves. And at a certain point, they ran into trouble with the company. The products weren't performing the way they had hoped they would, and they took an investment from what we now resultingly call a vulture investor. And this investment company from out of state, had given them money, invested in the company, but also at the same time did something called short selling shares in the company, by which they were banking on the company's failure. And at the same time they were investing in. And when the company subsequently went bankrupt, this outfit that had made money then went to try and sue these guys individually. The company was bankrupt. There was no insurance. And these poor fellows were on the hook for whatever a jury might find in favor of the plaintiffs. And I felt a personal connection to these folks. And And it fueled my desire in telling their story. And these are complex facts. And to distill those to a jury in federal court was an enormous challenge. And I remember it clearly because the trial went for a week, and it was the week my brother was getting married in California. And we put our case in on a Friday afternoon before I was supposed to hopefully leave to see my brother get married. And the partner that I work with said, don't wait for the jury. The case is in, just go. And I grabbed my stuff and I ran to the airport and I made it to my brother's wedding. And when I landed, I get a call that
Now, you're going to the Superior Court, and that's the only court that has an issue of abortion. If you had a 13-year-old appearing before you seeking an abortion without parental consent, we vote that you will follow the rule of law. And so, given that, following the rule of law, how do you think?
I have no debilitating moral objections or personal beliefs that would in any way impair my ability to hear that case, a Mary Moe petition and associated filings that would prevent me from hearing that and applying the facts to the law in that particular case, and doing so with all diligence and impartiality.
Now, when you look at your experience of all your cases, I just have one concern, and I know we need more people with your, when you have an outstanding background. What about your criminal background? Tell me how you have prepared to take on criminal cases when you have criminal cases. I already know, but I'm asking you, because you know why? I had someone there that had no criminal experience, and I said, what have you done to prepare? And that person that comes along has done nothing, didn't read a book, didn't take a course or whatever. So I'm asking you, how have you prepared?
Sure, thank you, Counselor. First of all, let me just say that in contemplating pursuit of this opportunity, which I'm hopeful and thankful you're considering me for, I did a lot of my own due diligence to see, is this something that I believe I can do, that I have the skills, knowledge, and abilities and qualifications for? And part of that due diligence, frankly, was speaking to current and former members of the Superior Court Judiciary about their experience. Because I know several have come through with only civil experience. And one of those judges I spoke to said, Adam, the time you spent in the district attorney's office trying cases, criminal cases, even though it was a short period of time, it certainly gave you the opportunity to try jury cases in a criminal context, not jury waived, make sentencing arguments, bail motions, bail hearings, learn your way around the courtroom in a manner that I didn't have before I took the bench. And also, I know that you, and I'll speak about particularly what I have done, will do to prepare. You'll use other resources that have been available to you and that you've used as a practicing attorney in your own career. You will do the reading, you will look at the guidance, and you will find good mentors. So I took that to heart, and I did several things in preparation for this process. One of which, frankly, I went in May and sat in on a murder trial down in Fall River to see firsthand and get the feeling for that, to see if I could see myself up there on the bench presiding over murder. I have taken, at the suggestion of others, MCLE programs, recently one on criminal, significant criminal cases and others, and I've made sure to, in recent weeks and months, refresh my recollection by reading up on criminal procedure, criminal law, and the like, search and seizure, sentencing. I've studied Judge Gantz's commissioned study by Harvard University on the racial disparities in our criminal justice system. And I've studied Judge Fabricant's committee report on best practices for sentencing in this report. I've also spoken to sitting and former district attorneys, Suffolk County District Attorney Dan Connolly in my office, and Franklin, Hampshire County District Attorney Dave Sullivan, who is currently serving, to get their input. I've spoken to a lot of people, done a lot of reading. nothing can substitute for doing the job itself. I am doing everything to prepare for that hopeful eventuality as possible.
Well, I'm going to tell you, for the 25 years, when I've asked that question with someone that just has civil, they have never done they've done. And I really think that's a wonderful thing to prepare yourself to take all that time. And so I know my time is up. They're going to ring a bell or something any minute now. But I can thank you enough for again, because you came one time and that's why I want to encourage people to keep trying, because we had someone this time, which shouldn't happen to anyone, but it happened. But thank you so much for applying. I thank the governor, Lieutenant Governor. I want people to know that they're going to apply, and it's not going to be based on politics. It's going to be based on qualifications and experience. And I love you pro bono, and that means a lot to me. So thank you, and thank you again for all that time. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you. Councilor Iannella.
Very much, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any questions. We had a lengthy conversation. I was impressed with your people on your behalf today. Good to see the senator again. I also want to let you know that I did receive a phone call from Judge McGrath, Judge Rendemule, also a phone that we have. And we're all Councilor Kennedy, strong supporter, and he thinks the world of you. And when you come before the council either next week or the week after, I'll be more than happy to support you.
Thank you. Councilor Ferrara is asked to be called out of order because he has to go to a meeting, if that's okay.
Thank you, thank you. I have a meeting at 11:30 with the governor, otherwise I would stay. So,
Second thought.
just, you and I had a very in-depth conversation. I appreciate that. This is a no-brainer. It's their first nomination, and I hope they're all like this because what an impeccable reputation you have, and your resume is incredible. Your public service is unbelievable. So you certainly have my vote next week. I did get a call last night from Judge Dupree, who thinks the world of you, and that means a lot to me. You know, I was a cop for 30 years, and I was a police chief, and I had the honor of being a Superior Court law clerk 30 years ago. So I would have loved to clerk with somebody like you, and I did clerk for great judges. I think you're going to be a tremendous asset to the Superior Court, and I might vote next week. Thank you. Thank you for applying. Thank you for taking the pay cut. Appreciate it.
Sir.
Councilor Duff.
Thank you. Yeah, the pay cut is something I talked to you about too. I feel very strongly, as I've vocalized to you and to many other people, that I've been in the Commonwealth, and it is systemic in being able to attract the people we really want to sit on the bench. That said, I believe that the system we use in Massachusetts is the best in the country, including this council. And we are blessed that we get people like you that have thought about public service and have taken the initiative to financially insulate themselves while they still have kids. You know, so you can enable your family to have the life that you want them to have, yet serve the public. So I appreciate that very much. I think it's grossly underappreciated by the press and by the public how much the men and women who serve us, particularly on the bench, but in any capacity in the court, give up to do it. If you look at any of the positions we get on a regular basis, or at least that I follow in the courts, the pay is abysmal. It's literally shocking. Some of it to me is not even a living wage. But that said, I enjoyed our talk. We knew each other before. I enjoyed that. I enjoy your path to law, because it wasn't necessarily what you know, as a younger man thought you would do. And sometimes the serendipitous roundabout leads to serendipity in this too. Things I talked to you about, because I know you're smart. I love the writing. I've just received some of the paperwork that I was pretty sure I didn't have, and I didn't, and read through it pretty quickly. Good stuff. Really, really well put together. JNC application. You've actually answered some of these questions, and a lot of people really don't. They they lawyer talk us, and they go around. I'm not a lawyer, I'm a public policy person, but as I told you, I work with some of the best legal minds in the country, and they taught me what to look for and what I don't know. It is very important. So that said, as I shared with you yesterday, part of my concern is the lack of respect that elected officials and judges have in the country and in the Commonwealth. And we had an incident several years ago, a Superior Court judge who sat in my district. I never voted on the man. I, at the time, had never met him. He made a ruling that was very unpopular publicly. The court had protesters at it all day long. He was harassed, his family was harassed. People, including elected officials, were calling for his impeachment and resignation because they didn't agree with what he said. Now, I'm a strong believer in separation of powers. I also think, and I could be wrong, I've been wrong before, that judges are probably privy to some information we're not, right? Particularly if it's not a jury case. And so whether or not I agreed with this particular ruling or not, to me really wasn't the issue. The issue was, how civil are we, right? And where's the line that one crosses or doesn't cross? And as you and I shared with you my own personal challenge with that, because people know I'm a little hot and spicy sometimes, and I'm not pleased with some of the stuff coming out of Washington. But you can't have it two ways. You have to be who you are, and you have to stand firmly in that. Do you feel that you have a good, solid support system in your family, your friends, your community? And when I say spiritually, I don't necessarily mean faith-wise. I mean in your inner core of self, to withstand any type of public attack that may be wrought upon you and your family and children. People spawned and murdered and raped and done all these horrible things, which naturally you would never do, right? If you ever thought something like that would happen. But we don't know what's going to happen. We're only human. And I think it is so critical that judges, and as part of your training, and I hope the chief, you may have it, Judge Fabricant and I talked about this a lot, that this is something that is taken very, very seriously, because we have become a society, although bless us, and thank God we're in Massachusetts, but we have a society at war with each other. And so are you confident in that system that you have? And can you share a little bit about it? And don't share anything you don't think you need to share. This isn't a gotcha question. I want to make sure you're okay.
Thank you, Counselor. It's a very thoughtful question. We live in a world that is divided, of course, very much so. And an independent judiciary is critical. A judiciary that does not pay heed to public sentiment, but applies the facts to the law. So I get that, and I'm hopeful that the eventuality that you described, that painful and terrible one, is not ever something that I have to deal with. But I know that I am supported by a great network of loved ones and friends and colleagues. And look, self-care is a very big part of our existence as we deal with the stressors of work and life. And I am someone who tries to take care of myself in that regard. I exercise regularly. I try and eat somewhat well. And we have an active family, and we try and, we take care of each other. And I'll have that to rely on. So I think the answer is yes and okay. And I know it'll be a challenge.
And I hope it never is, to be frank. I hope you never encounter this. But I do want you and your wife to prepare your children, in particular, in your community, if there is any like this. I spent an entire day in the it wasn't the district court, it was the Superior Court. I spent an entire day talking to every single staff member there in the trauma, the actual trauma the staff had been put through, who had nothing to do with this judgment at all. But because of the protesters and the harassment and the haranguing and the horrible things said to them and everything, it's just literally unbelievable. And like I said, I'm an Italian-Irish girl. Got a long fuse, but a really bad temper. And they can all tell you, when I blow, I blow. But there's a time and a place, right? And you have to own it when you. So anyway, it is something that was so raw in my community. And the funniest part of the whole thing is everyone was screaming what a left-wing liberal this man was, when indeed he was actually a very conservative lawyer judge, which I personally just got a big kick out of. I'm not concerned about what one may call your lack of civil law. Again, not a lawyer, but I mean criminal law. Sorry, I apologize. I find the civil cases to be a little bit more complex in many ways. Now, Kennedy would probably disagree with me as a criminal lawyer, but I think that the civil cases I personally find them fascinating. So I'm not concerned about that. I'm not concerned about your intellectual curiosity, because that's really what we need for someone. None of us are the 100% package, right? So I'm confident with that. The last thing I want to ask you, because we know that you're smart. We do. We know you're smart. You wouldn't work at Mintz if you weren't. Period. End of story. You wouldn't. Senator Cowan wouldn't be sitting here if you weren't worth it, because he wouldn't. I know him. And your writing is extraordinary, which is really a big chunk of what you're going to do in Superior Court, right? So you like to write, so you're already at the 50-yard line for that stuff. But if you're willing, and no pressure, but only if you're willing, is there any life experience or anything in your journey as a person that you think will inform what type of judge you may be, or you will be or hope to be? Something that is not quantifiable on this paper. Something that really, sort of pulls back some of the layers and shows us who this attorney is. Because those are the things, that stuff that's not on a resume, that's the meat for me. That's the meat and potatoes, right? That's who are you? How does that inform how you look, not just at the world, but at the reading of the law, in the impartial, fair reading of law? Because that's a really hard thing. Being a judge is a really, really hard thing. Despite what some pundits might say, it is a really hard job. Are you willing to share any of that?
I'm being coy. Can I say no? No, Counselor, I think it's a terrific question. And in some respects, it gets to the core of who I am and what I bring to this process. And I do have an answer. I do have an answer. And it's within, superficially, my application package. I ran for office in 2004 for the state Senate. And you all appreciate, as folks who've run for office, the process for seeking elected office. I knocked on 5,000 doors and spoke to people from all walks of life who come to the door with struggles, with the greatest of humanity, with substance abuse issues that maybe family have, with financial struggles, challenges, maybe mental illness, maybe who knows what. But you're getting people and seeing them, you're hearing from them firsthand what their challenges are. And it's very humbling. I bring that appreciation of humanity, and that every person who appears before me when I'm presiding in a courtroom has a story that I don't know, that I might not ever know, but they come before me looking for some amount of justice and to be treated fairly. And I can't ever purport to know what their struggle is or what they've come to that point in time in my courtroom, should I be so fortunate to get there with. And I've got to remember that every day. But I've been guided by that since 2004, when I ran. As you surmised, I lost. And And there's no shame in that. I'm proud of the effort I made, but I'm proud of what I got out of it. And that's what I got.
That's a great answer, thank you. Yeah, running for office is hard. And if you really run, and you really get out there and you really talk to people, it is very humbling and very, very enlightening. I believe that the most important day of anyone's life is the day that they're in court. And it doesn't matter what they're there for. It doesn't matter if it's an OUI, if it's a probate, it doesn't matter. They want to win, but they really want to be treated with respect and they want to be heard. And that is our job, to hopefully be right about the folks who sit in that chair. And it heartens me that you feel that way as well. You know, you're very well respected and thought of. I think your path is really great. I think the path from, you know, public education into private education is, to me, something, and I don't know what your high school or anything was, but I was blessed to have both of those educations, and they're vastly different. And the people you meet, the people you sit next to are vastly different. But for me, it really has informed who I am as a person. And you also said something in here that really resonated with me, is you will never forget where you came from. And that is so very important, because there for the grace of God go I. And I think every single one of us should always remember that you know, we are blessed. We're blessed to be elected. We're blessed to live in Massachusetts. Someone like me, every single day I wake up, I wouldn't, there are states in this country, literally, as a gay woman, I wouldn't step foot in today. Fear of my safety in my life. I would not. You know, being in Massachusetts and being married and having a wife who's just gone through a really, really incredible, very, very serious last 2 weeks of illness, to be able to be in that room, that doesn't happen everywhere. And if I wasn't in that room, my wife probably would be alive today. She'd be on her way to being dead. And so these are things that we take.
Councilor Duff, you're out of time, so.
I'm getting the axe. All right, so.
I just want to say something before
Thank you.
we move on, that having served with Councilor Duff for 10 years, I can confirm she has a temper. To the Apollo.
Thank you, Counselor.
Good morning. We all know that your civil experience is great and that it'll be an asset to Superior Court if you go there.
Sure, he's fine with that.
Sorry. But there is the criminal side of things, and we had a good conversation yesterday morning, and so I do want to talk about some of the substance of the criminal aspect of being on the bench. And just as my colleague, Councilor Devaney, brought up the relatively unlikely scenario of a minor coming before you as a Superior Court judge seeking an abortion without parental consent. It may not ever happen in your time as a judge, but it might happen. And we do so much right here in Massachusetts, especially in our courts. Well, I'm interested in the ones that slip between the cracks. So I think knowing how you'd respond in that situation is helpful. But the particulars of criminal matters you might deal with. In your application and in our conversation, you talked about the diligence you did preparing for criminal work, including the sentencing guidelines, the best practice is on individualized evidence-based sentencing report. So I want to ask a little bit about those things. So in the sentencing guidelines from the Superior Court, from the Sentencing Commission, just to think about a couple of them. One says the defendant was suffering from a mental or physical condition that significantly reduced his culpability for the defense. That's a potentially mitigating factor. So when I think about a mental or a physical condition, does age fit into that category, do you think? Is age a physical condition or a mental condition?
I don't know, sitting here today, if that fits into what that particular provision contemplates, but we know in part because we've discussed this, that age with regard to an emerging adult population is something that certainly must be considered because of the nature of the juvenile and emerging adult brain.
I ask because I know one of the other mitigating circumstances listed is the age of the defendant at the time of the offense, apologies. But when I'm thinking about the brain development, that's a physical condition that someone has. And so, as an example, when you experience childhood trauma, it exacerbates and delays your brain development. So that's a physical condition that's related to age, but also related to your environmental factors, right? So what do you think about that? Do you think when I think about brain development, and the SJC has very clearly instructed us to follow the science, do you think that knowing about childhood trauma would be an important factor for you in exercising your discretion?
Yes.
And how would you find out about it?
That is the million-dollar question, Counselor. We expect those who come before us, especially younger defendants, to be represented by able counsel, who have been interviewed by probation, to have voices in advocacy presenting on their behalf. But at the same time, as I understand it, and I'm not there yet, but I can foresee situations where victims of trauma might not always be forthcoming with explanations of how, and they might not understand, frankly.
You may not trust their attorneys.
Maybe not trust attorneys or the system or what have you. It's a challenge, and I think you should expect, or I would expect to be proactive in asking questions. And I don't know what
Would you ask counsel for sentencing memoranda?
I think everything that I would hopefully do depends upon the specific facts and circumstances of the case before me.
Okay.
And
Let's say it's a case where your discretion would allow for lifetime, life without parole, for example, or strike that. Let's say that you're in a situation where strike that. Would you ever ask for an evidentiary hearing in the sentencing phase of things?
I would not foreclose any opportunity that the law provides me to pursue that would allow me to draw upon the instructions, advisory though they may be, in the Superior Court Best Practices and Sentencing Guide that says consider the defendant's background and circumstances in making these decisions. So if the law allows me to have such a hearing, then that's a consideration I should make. That's my feeling sitting here today.
So the SJC relatively recently said that you can't give someone life without parole for an offense 21 or under. I'm sorry, under the age of 21. And again, says to follow the brain science. So in cases like Dyachenko and a written decision I'm particularly fond of, Ulani, which was about a juvenile who was held in contempt in juvenile court. Again, it's very clear that we're asked to follow the science. But the science, which I'm very familiar with, says that brain development doesn't stop at 21, especially for men. And again, especially for folks who've experienced trauma before that age. So you're very intelligent. You like to look at evidence. So if a savvy attorney is presenting to you the brain science around brain development up to age, I don't care what the age is, are you going to be bold enough to take that science and to incorporate it into your decision?
As I've said, applying the facts before me to the law of the individualized case is what my charge will be. And if it includes,
But the law changes, right? Because we're asked to consider new information.
and if it includes hearing new information and that's considered being bold, then yes, I can assure you that I have no problem being bold.
And I asked you yesterday if you'd ever visited one of our state's institutions, and I asked you if you'd consider visiting a DCF group home as well.
Yes, you did, and my response, I can confirm, was absolutely affirmative.
Yes.
I think, forgive me, I think, although I sit here today making no promises, I think it would be particularly instructive for anyone in my position on the verge of assuming, hopefully, the position I hope to view the various commercial institutions where we may be sending people.
When we talk about, and I ask because we talk about balancing public safety, deterrence, and rehabilitation, and I wonder, is incarceration a rehabilitative solution? Do you think rehabilitation is happening for our incarcerated population in general? If that's the goal.
That is the goal, right? I mean, that's the goal. In practice, is it happening the way it should be? I don't know. I don't know that the data says that it is.
It could be better, but there's a lot of good people doing good work, but it could be better. And we could have more resources there to provide services and programming that would help people rehabilitate.
I don't think it's a controversial statement for me to agree with you.
And so, you know, what I suggested also was that you visit one of the educational programs because those folks have really thought about their situation and how they got to where they are. And one of the mitigating factors in the sentencing guidelines talks about whether or not the defendant's criminal history category overstates the seriousness of the defendant's prior record. And having worked with juveniles, I know that some of these kids do pile up records as young adults through their juvenile years that do overstate the seriousness because of the contextual circumstances of the case. So I just hope that you will indeed follow through and make sure those perspectives are part of the other diligence you did in talking with DAs and in reviewing Crim Pro. I certainly have no concerns about you managing criminal procedure.
That's what I fully intend to, and I appreciate the suggestion.
Thank you so much for your time yesterday morning. You were flexible as my daughter appeared with us, having missed the bus. But I appreciate your time this morning as well. Congrats on being nominated.
Thank you. Council Jacobs. We're gonna cede everybody's extra time that they had to Council Jacobs since it's her first hearing, so she got like 45 minutes on this.
Oh, you're gonna regret that. Oh, well, good morning. It's good to see you again. I want to start off as well thanking you for making the drive to North Adams. I don't feel quite as bad because you had the glorious fall foliage to enjoy on your way. I feel a little bad because it started pouring rain. So hopefully you had a safe drive home. But thank you for coming out, and we did sit and have a lengthy conversation that kind of went down many paths and roads, and I very much enjoyed meeting with you, hearing from you, and getting to know you. I will also share that I also received a call from DA David Sullivan, who you did mention, or I think you mentioned it, just giving me lots of supportive, wonderful, positive information about what he knows of you and his relationship with you, and I very much value his opinion, so that was a call I really appreciated getting on your behalf. Before I ask you some questions, I just want to share that this has not been streaming, this hearing. We are not live. I am a little upset about it, partially because I know there's people
Just
texting me.
There's a technical difficulty that Aaron's been working on trying to fix.
Yeah.
It was nobody's fault. It's not intentional.
No, I would not want to suggest that.
A recording of the whole, an audio recording of the whole hearing for the public.
Are we gonna put that up? Are we gonna put that up?
We can, sure.
I would appreciate that. Just because I've been receiving texts during this of people who want to watch who are telling me that it has not been.
Are you telling me I broke the camera? I'm not surprised.
Got mad and she hit it on the way in.
So I don't want to belabor that. I just wanted to share that I just feel these proceedings this is our very first nominee. As Ms. mentioned, it's my very first judicial nominee hearing, and I regret that it's not having the public access that it should. Having said that, I want to touch back on some things that we already talked about, and then I know we talked about so many things, but I forgot one thing. So there's a new question that we haven't already discussed, but I am curious to hear your feedback on. So some of my fellow counselors have touched on, your experience is impressive and extensive, but very much focused on the civil side and very specific stream within the civil side. And so as much as you've already talked a little bit about your experience with criminal and the learning curve and resources that you intend to tap into as you delve into the criminal side of Superior Court cases, which the criminal experience you've had has been district court, which as much as that can rise to a level of violence and whatever, it's substantially different than the kinds of cases you'll see in Superior Court. So I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about how you intend to kind of approach the learning curve, and if there are mentors or support systems or resources that you intend to tap into, what those might, who you'll rely on as you learn, and just sort of the nature of how you intend to wrap your arms around Superior Court work.
Sure. Thank you, Counselor. And let me also say how much I enjoyed meeting with you. And it was not by any means an imposition to spend a fall day driving to the Berkshires amidst your glorious foliage and the like. And I appreciate your hospitality in having me out there to sit with you. Yes, I think I referenced before that I intend to draw upon the skills in the first part, and the skills and the resources that I've learned to develop in my own practice as a civil attorney for the last 26 years. And one, you've got to be diligent. And I know Judge Squires Lee has written about this recently, and I think the Boston Bar Journal, and in encouraging people to consider the judiciary. One of the greatest things we bring to this position, she said, is diligence. That and the curiosity for the law. And those are two things that have guided me through the practice thus far in my own right. And you've got to be willing to roll up your sleeves and dig in, especially, I appreciate how especially critical it is in the criminal realm. I've worked on the civil side, and there's a lot at stake for my clients, but I fully appreciate that people's life and liberty are at stake when it's the criminal side. And so I have to redouble my efforts in rolling up my sleeves and getting to work and making sure that every day is my best day and that I'm familiar with the subject matter that I'm going to be reviewing. Now, having said that, I keep hearing from members of the judiciary that you're going to find civil matters each day that are new to you on a daily basis that you haven't seen in your practice, and you're going to have to deal with that as well. But I will also say that I have been enormously, just overwhelmingly, just thrilled with the response I've gotten since my nomination from people, and in part at Chief Brieger's creation of a very collegial group among the Superior Court. I've heard from judges who said, you're joining a very collegial and supportive group. And I know that there are folks that have been doing this a lot longer, that have expertise in particular areas that I'll be able to turn to. And I will do so freely. I've never been the person to think I'm the smartest guy in the room. I very freely seek mentoring and advice of those who are willing to share it on expertise that I don't have. And that's critical, and I will continue to do that. I don't know what more I can say on that and still allow you to get the questions out that you want to get out within the
I appreciate that you've already had some of these starting conversations and sort of laid the groundwork for, so I do appreciate that. We did talk a great deal about things like trauma and substance abuse, mental health as factors that I expect you will be confronted with on a regular basis in the Superior Court. And so sort of similarly, and building on what Councilor DiPaolo was just talking about and asking about. I'm just curious to hear what, if any, plans you do have to sort of avail yourself of more information and understanding around trauma, substance abuse, mental health issues that will be relevant in
Yeah.
this work.
Pardon me. Absolutely, I think it's critical that someone in my position, should I be afforded that opportunity, familiarizes oneself with literature concerning that. You've got to get up to speed, because these, as the best practices in sentencing report sets forth, are critical issues that inform a defendant's background. And again, we're speaking in the criminal context, of course, and particularly with regard to people who may before me as criminal defendants. And we need, I presume, to be focused on the whole of the person before us. And sometimes that involves significant substance abuse and mental health issues. And frankly, we've talked about, you and I talked in particular about some of the diversionary programs that are available to folks who are in need of more than just a criminal sentence, but treatment. And those are things that I fully intend to study thoroughly as I forge my way upon this path, if I'm given the opportunity.
Appreciate that. I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about your DEI work as the chair of your firm's DEI group, and particularly from the standpoint of what you learned during the course of doing that work, being involved in that work, and how you think it might impact how you approach the work as a superior coach.
Thank you for the question. Thank you for that opportunity. Yes, as my application package suggests, I served on our firm's diversity committee for a number of years. And I remember when our managing partner came to me and said, we'd like you to do this. I went straight to a friend of mine who's not in the room, who was the outgoing president of the Mass Black Lawyers Association, and said, what am I supposed to be doing here? And he said, look, first of all, you need to be aware, and you need to be appreciative of the fact that I walk into rooms all the time where I'm the only person in this city, in this community, that looks like me, and what that means to me, and how that affects my career trajectory and my practice. And I thought, and I said, what else? And he said, educate yourself, learn. Learn what it's like, learn what it means, and then when you can, try and be an advocate. And I'm very proud of the work that we did on that committee. At the time, Mintz was considered a very diverse place comparatively as regard other firms. But we put some programs into place that I think were very important. We started implicit bias training as a result of discussions that came out of the diversity committee. And this was before the court did so. And now the court has done that. And the court has also instituted an implicit bias jury instruction. And I'm thankful, frankly, that I live in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, as Councilor Duff alluded to before, to be in a place where we have these tools and we have this thinking and we have a Supreme Judicial Court that is focused on this. And of course, the Judge Gantz's Harvard Commission report touches greatly upon that too. But that kind of really nudged me in the direction of, don't forget this too. I mean, we go out into this world trying to remember the humanity of the people before us and always have your best day, but this is a critical piece of what we're doing as well, for sure.
So I appreciate that you also alluded to the racial disparity Harvard study report, which I hope will be refreshed with new data soon. I know it's a big undertaking, but I really value having that information available and understanding the nature of our justice system and the racial disparities at play, both in our incarcerated population, but also as it plays farther down the spectrum towards parole and the racial disparities there. So having done the work of implicit bias for a number of years, having done this diversity work for a number of years, and thinking about the state of our justice system, the racial injustices that we are aware exist, how will you approach the work as a Superior Court judge, or will you approach the work of a Superior Judge in an effort to shift those trends?
Sure, sure. Well, I think the short answer is, in addition to presiding over sessions, we also play a role in some degree as a bully pulpit. And we can speak up on things that we see. But certainly we have work to do. And I appreciate the fact the SJC has put us on a path toward doing that good work, and I'll do everything in my power to be a part of that, continue it. And I completely agree with you that the data is now several years old, and it's probably time for some new data, and hopefully it might show some progress.
One would hope. One would definitely hope. The last question I want to ask you is one we didn't talk about, so I'll be curious to hear what your thoughts are. But I'm sure across the state, definitely in Western Mass, I encounter a great deal of discussion and concern from multiple sides of the argument around the system that we use for bail setting.
What?
Bail. And around the discussion around bail reforms that have happened or maybe should happen. So I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are, what your philosophy is around the area of bail. And I do apologize for just out of the blue giving you a question we hadn't talked about at all, but I am curious to hear your thoughts.
Well, I think I hesitate to delve into what may be the political or the legislative side, because I think, as we've discussed, I think an independent judiciary is critical. And I appreciate that I will have the need to work within the structure that I encounter that's presented to me. And I do so with an appreciation of the data and an understanding of what's been done in other states. But frankly, with what we have here and the purposes for bail and how our statute is set forth, and I will do my best to apply it diligently with all the considerations that we are required to have. I don't know that I can say much more than that, Counselor.
Fair enough. All right. Well, I appreciate hearing your thoughts at all. I don't have anything further. I think
Started
we made
tonight.
it, right?
Perfect.
See that?
Okay. The chair, however, gets an hour.
He should.
We had a long conversation in my office. We sat down and talked about all the different issues that I have. I have a couple of questions for you, but comments. And then we're going to wrap up because the Lieutenant Governor is going to be coming in about 4 minutes for our assembly. So I promise to be done before then. There's a couple of things going on right now in the Superior Court. There's your time up. There you go.
Counselor, was that your timer?
It was my time. Nice talking to you. But one of the things that's going on right now, and I touched on this earlier when we were outside, is that right now the Superior Court's down 12 sessions. They've got, I think, 9 openings and 2 or 3 judges that are out ill, unfortunately. So that's creating a real backlog, especially in the civil side. What kind of things do you think you'll be able to do jumping in and addressing that? It's going to be, there's a mountain of work out there right now, and there's a huge backlog on the civil side, especially because criminal takes, as it should, because of people's freedom of its takes precedence.
The mantra of Judge Young in the federal court is justice delayed is justice denied. So I am going to do everything I can to get sworn in if I'm given that opportunity and blessing as soon as practicable, and hit the ground running at the direction of the chief who's here today. And for all I know, she might walk me out here and give me a stack of papers.
I recently got a trial date on a civil case in Superior Court. I recently got a trial date on a civil case in Superior Court. It was in 2025. And that was with a maybe. There was no guarantees, and that's kind of what's going on right now. The flip side of that coin is all of a sudden everybody's back to worrying about time standards and getting things done on the criminal side. I've never been a big fan of them. I think that when cases are ready, they're ready, and lawyers usually know when they are, both sides. How do you feel about time standards? Let me give you an example. I walk into court tomorrow. This isn't a stretch. And I say, geez, I got 4 trials on next week. I gotta move 3 of them. One of them's yours. And you're saying, well, this case is 2 years old. What are you gonna do then when the lawyer's standing there with a schedule that is just impossible to keep?
Well, look, I think the short answer is it depends upon the facts and circumstances of the case and the docket before me. But at the same time, Counsel, you appreciate that there was a report put out by a committee that looked at lawyers' well-being. And one of the biggest stressors on people in our industry is the institution of arbitrary deadlines by the court. And, you know, I think one of the hallmarks of my practice and working with people that I have is that you don't give people false deadlines, okay, just to manage your own affairs. And I think you've got to be flexible. And I appreciate that we have a docket to get through, but you can't always put the burden on the individual practitioner who may be carrying 4, 5, 6 cases at a time. There's got to be flexibility there.
5, 6.
I mean, at the moment,
Well, like 200. One of the problems, you have, especially at district court more that I'm seeing, and I do some superior, trying to do less and less, but I do a lot of district, is that I'm walking in there and somebody like Judge Stark's looking at me and saying, this case is 750 days old. Well, we got to get this moving. Well, we're not caught up from COVID. And all of a sudden, everybody's ignoring the fact that we didn't do trials for 1.5 years, almost 2 years. I'm still catching up from COVID with my backlog. Yeah, and that's happening in Superior Court too. How are you going to address that when you're looking at a case that's old, but you're also looking at, you know, we were shut down for 1.5 years through no one's fault.
to the extent, Mr. Chairman, that woven in there was a request that I comment on a decision made by Judge Stark. Refused to touch that, nor will I do so.
You've just proven yourself as a very wise man. I don't question her either when I'm in front of her. So.
Counselor, that is a huge, huge problem, the backlog. And I think one of the best things that we can do is continue to lobby the governor to make nominations and appointments so we can get back to speed.
Okay, I don't want to keep the lieutenant governor waiting, so we're going to adjourn.
I have one.
One follow-up, okay?
Judge
Go ahead.
David Frank, and I wanted to mention that he said wonderful things about this nominee, and I want to put that in the record.
Very good. Adjourn.
And I'd like to recognize Counselor Ianella for a prayer and leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'd just like, if we could have a moment of silence. Our colleague Marilyn Devaney, her daughter, passed away on the end of September. Marilyn Hirschline, she lived in New York with her husband and two children, Matthew and Megan. Marilyn was a graduate of Boston College. I think she graduated in 1983. It's always tough to lose a family member. When you lose your daughter, I can only imagine. And my prayers and thoughts are with you, Marilyn.
Thank you, Chris.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag.
the United States.
The Republic.
I'd like to recognize Counselor Kennedy for a motion to record advice and consent for the financial warrant.
So moved, Governor.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Ferrer. All those in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. I'd like to recognize Counselor Duff for a motion to record advice and consent for the pending list of notaries public.
So move, Governor.
Is there a second? Seconded by Counselor Ianella. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have you. The ayes have it. I believe that concludes our business, so I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I had one thing.
Counselor
The
Devaney?
last nominee was a member of the Joint Bar Association, and I just wanted to say it publicly, because some of the new councils won't know it. We used to get a letter from the Joint Bar, because they would look at the JNC and they would make a recommendation, whether they recommend this person or not. And it stopped with Governor Patrick, and I'm just hoping that Governor Healy will do that. I mean, he had no idea that letter didn't go to us. He had no idea that I don't know where it goes. So I just want to say that publicly to you. I don't want to take your time, but I think it's something that we should, if those people are taking the time to recommend, I think the Governor's Council should know. So I thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris.
I think we've had a motion to adjourn that's been made and seconded. All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it. Stand adjourned.
With it.